Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into the weeds, into the operational core of things.
We are.
We're talking about how big strategic ideas actually get turned into concrete action. We're looking at the doctrine of orders production.
It really is the engine room, isn't it? It's where the high-level thinking, the commander's vision, gets transformed into something a soldier can actually execute.
Exactly, into those clear 5-paragraph directives that get thousands of people moving in the same direction at the same time.
And we're not just pulling this out of thin air. We're grounded in a very specific foundational source for this.
Right. So what's the document that lays all this out for us?
Our guide for this deep dive is Field Manual 5.0, Planning and Orders Production. And we're looking at the November 2024 version.
Okay.
And this thing is, well, it's comprehensive. It details everything from high-level problem-solving methodologies down to the actual formats for plans and orders. It's the playbook.
So our mission today is to unpack that process. How you go from this vague concept to the standard 5-paragraph order situation, mission, execution, sustainment, and command and signal.
And how you achieve that synchronization in time, space, and purpose. That's the magic.
All right, so let's set the stage. Why is this process so rigid, so structured? What's the context it operates in?
Well, you have to start with the environment itself. The whole doctrine is built to counteract what is, an inherently chaotic situation.
And what defines that chaos? What are the big factors?
Military operations are just, they're dynamic, and they're uncertain. The manual points to 3 big persistent features: complexity, chance, and friction.
Okay, complexity makes sense, just this sheer number of moving parts.
Right. You have friendly units, enemy units, terrain, weather, the local population.
Yeah.
All interacting in ways you can't fully predict.
And friction. That's the classic idea that anything that can go wrong will go wrong.
Exactly. It's everything that makes simple things hard in execution. A truck breaks down. A radio battery dies. Someone writes down the wrong map coordinate. It's the cumulative effect of all these tiny problems.
And then there's just pure chance, the things nobody could have seen coming.
Yep. The completely unexpected. And because of that volatility, the goal of planning can't be to eliminate uncertainty. I mean, that's just impossible.
So if you can't get rid of it, what's the point of the plan?
The goal is to develop a flexible framework for action that works inside that chaos. You're building something that can bend when it gets hit by friction or chance, but doesn't break.
Robustness, not perfection.
That's the key. And that's also why the planning itself has to be scalable.
How so?
Well, planning for a major multi-corps campaign is worlds away from a platoon leader quickly sketching out a hasty attack. The doctrine has to cover both extremes.
So you have this huge range, from highly structured with a full staff down to a single leader with a map and a pencil.
It has to accommodate all of it.
Okay, so if the scope is that variable, the approaches must be different too. Let's get into that ecosystem of methodologies.
There are 3 main toolkits, if you will. Army design methodology, the military decision-making process, and troop leading procedures.
Are these 3 separate things, or do they build on each other?
That's a great question. They're not islands. They're all built on one common logical foundation, which is Army problem solving.
So Army problem solving is like the base operating system for everything else.
It is. It's a 7-step analytical process for solving problems in general, not just military ones. Gather info, identify the real problem, develop criteria for a good solution, generate some options, analyze them, compare them, and then make a decision and implement it.
That's the structured thinking that underpins everything.
It is, whether you're planning a war or just reorganizing the motor pool.
Okay, so let's pivot to the most abstract of the 3. Army design methodology. This sounds like where the really big, messy thinking happens.
That's a good way to put it. Army design methodology, or ADM, is what you use when you're facing what the doctrine calls wicked problems.
Define wicked problem for us. What makes it wicked?
A wicked problem is one that's just ill-structured. Where solving one part of it creates 3 new problems somewhere else. Or maybe the desired end state is really fuzzy, really hard to even define.
So you might not even know what the right question is at the start.
Precisely. This is for long-range planning or situations where the whole environment is a complex adaptive system that's changing as you interact with it.
It's the zoom out and understand the whole messy context phase.
That's exactly it. And I have 3 core activities. First is framing an operational environment. This is a deep, deep dive. You're trying to understand all the variables: political, military, economic, social, information, infrastructure, and how they're likely to evolve over time, even without you doing anything.
It's like a doctor diagnosing the patient before even thinking about a cure.
Perfect analogy. Once you've mapped that environment, you move to framing problems.
And the key here is that the problem isn't the mission objective.
Not at all. The goal is to identify the systemic, interrelated obstacles that are preventing you from getting to where you want to go. This produces the problem statement, which focuses everyone on the root cause, not just the symptoms.
And the third activity bridges that understanding to actual action.
Yes, that's developing an operational approach. This is where you start painting in broad strokes. You define the ends, what conditions you want to see in the end state, the ways, the general sequence of actions or lines of effort, and the means, the resources you'll need. It's a 30,000-foot view of the campaign.
So Army design methodology gives you this philosophical foundation and the general path forward.
Right. It's the diagnosis and the high-level treatment plan.
But it doesn't give you the detailed prescription. It doesn't tell you who moves where and when.
Exactly. And that's the handoff point. The products from Army design methodology, the environmental frame, the problem frame, the operational approach, they become the critical input for the next, much more detailed process.
Which is the military decision-making process.
Right. But before we jump there, you can't forget the commander's role in all of this.
The central figure.
Absolutely. The commander focuses the entire effort, and they do that with three main tools. First, commander's intent, the purpose, and the end state. Second, planning guidance, which is where they lay out their visualization, that operational approach we just talked about.
And the third one is about information, right? Focusing the collection effort.
That's the commander's critical information requirements. The commander identifies the few, absolutely essential pieces of information they need to make key decisions at critical moments. It keeps the intelligence assets from boiling the ocean and focuses them on what actually matters for the upcoming decision.
Okay, so we've done the big picture thinking. Now we move into that methodical 7-step machine, the military decision-making process. This is for headquarters with staffs.
This is where the ideas become a plan. The military decision-making process is the systematic way a staff analyzes a mission, develops options, we call them courses of action, and produces the final order.
Let's walk through it. Step 1 is receipt of mission. This seems like it's all about time management.
It is, fundamentally. The very first thing the staff does is assess the time available. And they live by the 1/3, 2/3 rule.
Meaning they use 1/3 of the time for their own planning?
And leave 2/3 for their subordinate units. That's the ideal. They map out a timeline for all 7 steps, but there's one thing they have to do immediately.
Which is it?
Get the first warning order out the door.
Ah, so communicate outward before you do anything else.
You have to. As soon as you have a general idea of the mission, you push a warning order to your subordinates. It tells them the type of operation, the general location, the initial timeline, and anything they need to start doing right now. It's all about buying them time.
Okay, that makes sense. Then we move into step 2, mission analysis. You've said this is the most important step. Why?
Because if you get this wrong, you risk solving the wrong problem perfectly. This step is all about getting everyone to a deep, shared understanding of the situation as it is right now.
And every section of the staff is involved.
Every single one. They all start updating their running estimates. A running estimate is just a continuous assessment of the current situation from their particular specialty. The intelligence officer's estimate looks at the enemy. The logistics officer's looks at fuel and ammo levels. They're all different, but they have to feed one coherent picture.
And a huge part of this is the intelligence deep dive, the intelligence preparation of the operational environment.
Right. That's a formal 4-step process the intelligence staff leads. They define the environment, describe its effects, evaluate the threat, and then most importantly, they determine the threat's likely courses of action.
So it's not just collecting facts, it's predictive.
It is absolutely predictive. They're not just saying what the enemy can do, they're trying to figure out what the enemy is most likely to do and what the most dangerous thing they could do is.
And the outputs from that drive the whole intelligence collection plan.
Precisely. It produces things like detailed threat models and identifies gaps in our knowledge. And those gaps become the initial priority intelligence requirements.
Okay, while intelligence is doing that, the rest of the staff is figuring out exactly what they've been told to do. This brings us to tasks and constraints.
Yep. They go through the higher headquarters order with a fine-tooth comb. They identify specified tasks, things explicitly written in the order, and then they figure out the implied tasks.
Things you have to do to accomplish the mission, even if nobody wrote them down.
Like if you're told to seize a bridge, An implied task is probably securing the roads leading to it. From that whole list, they then select one or two essential tasks. These are the absolute must-dos.
And those become the heart of the unit's own mission statement?
Exactly.
We also have to talk about facts and assumptions. I feel like this is where so many plans go off the rails in any organization.
It's a huge pitfall. Distinguishing between a verifiable fact and a necessary assumption is critical.
So an assumption is something you have to believe is true to keep planning because you just don't have proof yet.
Right. But it can't just be wishful thinking. An assumption has to be both valid, meaning it's logical and realistic, and necessary, meaning you can't move forward without it. If you assume the enemy won't react for 3 days when all the intel says they're highly aggressive, that's an invalid assumption. It's a guess, and a bad one.
And that can doom the whole plan before you even start.
Absolutely.
Let's circle back to the commander's critical information requirements. This is the key output of mission analysis.
It is. It's the list of questions that the commander needs answered to make decisions, and they have to be limited in number and time-sensitive.
Because they're tied to a specific decision.
Every single one. It answers the question, what do I need to know, and by when, to decide if I'm going with Plan A or the contingency Plan B.
And they fall into 2 buckets.
2 buckets. Priority intelligence requirements, which are about the enemy and the environment, and friendly force information requirements, which are about the status of your own troops and your support. If a piece of info isn't tied directly to an upcoming decision, it's just nice to know. It's not a critical requirement.
Okay, so at the end of mission analysis, the staff has this deep shared understanding. Now they have to actually define the operation, and that starts with the mission statement.
Right. That short, concise sentence that answers the 5 W's. Who, what, when, where, and why.
And you've said before that the why, the purpose, is the most important part of that statement.
It's everything. It's the philosophical core of mission orders, of mission command. The plan, the what, will probably change. The first time you make contact with the enemy, parts of your plan might become irrelevant.
But the purpose remains constant.
The purpose is the North Star. It's what allows a subordinate leader, in the heat of the moment, to make a smart decision that's different from the plan but still accomplishes the boss's goal.
Can you give us an example of that?
Sure. Let's say your mission is seize Hill 101 to block enemy observation of the main bridge. The what is seize Hill 101. The why is to block observation.
Okay.
You get there, and Hill 101 is a fortress, unexpectedly reinforced. But you see that Hill 102, right next to it, is lightly defended and offers the exact same view of the bridge.
So you take Hill 102 instead.
You take Hill 102, you change the what, but you fulfill the why. That's subordinate initiative, and it's only possible if the purpose is crystal clear.
And that purpose is expanded upon in the commander's intent.
It is. The commander's intent is a clear expression of the purpose, the key tasks, and the desired military end state. It gives subordinates the context they need to make those kinds of decisions.
And that end state is really a picture of what success looks like across the board.
It is. It describes the desired conditions for friendly forces, for the enemy, for the terrain, and for the civilian population at the conclusion of the operation. It's the finish line.
All right, now we get to the creative part. Step 3, develop courses of action. The staff starts generating options for the commander. How do they make sure these options are actually viable?
There's a strict 5-point screening test. Every single course of action, or COA, must be suitable. It has to accomplish the mission. Feasible, you have the resources to actually do it. Acceptable, the cost is worth the gain. Distinguishable, it's meaningfully different from the other options. And complete, it addresses all the major operational elements.
If it fails even one of those, it's out.
Gone. Don't even waste time on it.
A huge part of developing those COAs is assessing relative combat power. And this isn't just counting tanks and guns, is it?
No, not at all. It's a classic blend of art and science. The science is the tangible stuff-force ratios, equipment capabilities. The art is assessing the intangibles, morale, leadership, training quality, even things like the enemy's information signature.
So what about those planning ratios you see in the manuals, like the famous 3-to-1 for an attacker? If they warn you not to rely on them, what are they even for?
They're a starting point, a historical rule of thumb. They're there to force a justification. If you propose an attack with only a 1.5-to-1 ratio, you'd better be able to articulate exactly why your intangible advantages, like total surprise or superior intelligence, are going to make up for that numerical disadvantage.
So it forces you to think through the art side of the equation.
Exactly.
Okay, so once you have a viable course of action, you need to describe it. That's the concept of operations.
This is the how. It's the narrative that explains how all the subordinate units are going to work together to get the mission done. It ties all the pieces together.
And it has to synchronize all the warfighting functions.
All of them. Movement and maneuver, intelligence, fires, sustainment, and protection. It has to explain how the artillery supports the infantry, how intelligence drives the targeting, how logistics keeps everyone supplied, and how protection efforts, like air defense, keep the force safe.
And this concept gets captured in two ways, right? Words and pictures.
Yep. The course of action statement is the detailed narrative. The course of action sketch is the graphic overlay that shows it on a map. The units, the control measures, the objectives. Together, they paint the full picture.
We've got options. Now we need to test them. Step 4. Course of action analysis, which everyone called wargaming.
Right. And your phrasing is perfect. This is where the staff tries to break their own plan before the enemy does.
They're looking for weaknesses, friction points, missed opportunities.
It's a disciplined process to visualize the flow of the battle. It's an action, reaction, and counteraction drill. We do this, the enemy does this, we counter with this.
And there are a few different techniques depending on the situation and how much time you have. Let's talk about the main ones. Belt, avenue in depth, and box.
The belt method is where you slice the battlefield horizontally. You look at everything that happens in one geographic slice, say, from the front line to the first objective before moving on to the next slice.
And when would you use that?
It's great for phased operations. Or when the terrain naturally creates these kinds of cross compartments, it forces you to look at all the interactions within a specific area at a specific time.
Okay, then there's the avenue in depth method.
This one is more linear. You focus on one avenue of approach at a time, usually starting with your main effort. It's really useful for offensive plans where you're trying to punch through along a specific axis.
And the third one, the box method.
The box method is like putting a magnifying glass on one critical event. A river crossing, the fight for a key intersection, a helicopter landing zone. You isolate that one small, critical piece of the plan and wargame it in intense detail because the whole mission hinges on it.
What if you're really, really short on time?
Then you use the key leader discussion. You get the commander and key staff in a room, you put the map on the wall, and you just talk it through. It's fast, it's rough, but it can be enough to deconflict the major friction points, especially when you're just updating an existing order.
The outputs of wargaming are huge. You're not just refining the plan, you're building in flexibility. Let's talk about branches and sequels.
This is all about planning for contingencies. A branch is an option you build into the current plan. It's an if-then statement. If the enemy counterattacks on our left flank, then we execute this pre-planned counterattack. It manages risk during the operation.
And a sequel looks beyond the current fight.
Right. A sequel is the next operation. You plan sequels for success. What do we do after we win, like an exploitation or a pursuit? But you also plan sequels for failure. What if this doesn't work? How do we transition to a defense? It ensures you're always thinking one step ahead.
Wargaming also helps you identify critical events and decision points.
A critical event is anything that has a direct impact on mission success. A decision point is a specific place and time where the commander anticipates having to make a key decision.
Like commit the reserve.
It's a classic example. And every decision point has to be linked to a commander's critical information requirement. The intel collection is focused on giving the commander the answer they need right when they arrive at that decision point.
So after you've wargamed all the options, you have to compare them. Step 5, course of action comparison.
Right. The staff takes all the data from the wargame, the advantages, the disadvantages, the risks of each COA, and they weigh them against the evaluation criteria they developed way back in mission analysis.
And how do they present that comparison in a way that's objective?
A common tool is the decision matrix. It's just a simple table where you score each course of action against the criteria. It's not a perfect science, but it forces a disciplined comparison and helps remove personal bias. It leads to a staff recommendation for the commander.
The commander gets the recommendation and makes the call in Step 6, course of action approval.
Yeah, the commander chooses the COA. And if they modify it at all, the staff has to quickly make those changes. And, this is important, issue another, more detailed warning order.
To keep the subordinates updated.
It gives them the final approved concept so they can start their detailed planning in parallel.
Which brings us to the finish line. Step 7, orders production. This is where it all gets put down on paper.
The approved course of action statement becomes the concept of operations in paragraph 3 of the order. The COA sketch becomes the operation overlay. All the detailed annexes for things like fires and sustainment are finalized. It's the final formal blueprint.
But before that order goes out, there are 2 last quality control checks, reconciliation and crosswalk. What's the difference?
Reconciliation is an internal check. The staff goes through their own order and all its annexes to make sure there are no contradictions. Does the fuel plan in the sustainment annex actually support the timeline in the maneuver plan? It's about making sure your own plan makes sense.
Okay, so reconciliation is about internal consistency. The crosswalk must be about external consistency.
Exactly. The crosswalk is where you compare your plan to the plan of your higher headquarters and the units next to you. You're making sure your plan is properly nested, that your timing is synced up, and that you're not, planning to drop artillery in the same place your neighbor is planning to send their scouts. It's about ensuring unity of effort.
Once that's done, the plan is signed, it's sent out, and there's a handoff inside the headquarters.
That's the plans to operations transition. The responsibility for the plan moves from the long-range planners to the current operations team, the people who will actually manage the fight in real time. They have to fully understand the plan so they can adjust it on the fly with fragmentary orders as the situation changes.
Okay, so that whole process is incredibly detailed, but it needs a full staff. What about the small units companies, platoons that don't have that luxury?
They use a different process, a more streamlined one called troop leading procedures, or TLPs.
And it's for leaders who are doing the planning themselves under a lot of pressure.
A ton of pressure. It's a dynamic 8-step process, but the steps aren't rigid. They often happen concurrently.
Let's run through them, but what's the most critical part?
Without a doubt, the first 2 steps. Receive the mission, and then immediately issue a warning order. For a small unit, time is life. That leader has to get some initial information out to their subordinates so they can start preparing, checking weapons, drawing ammo, prepping vehicles.
Okay, so after that initial warning order, they have to make a tentative plan.
Right. And they often only have time to develop one good course of action. Then they initiate movement, get people moving to where they need to be, and then a critical step, conduct reconnaissance.
They have to see the ground for themselves.
They have to. They don't have a big intelligence staff to do it for them. They need to confirm the route, see the objective, look for enemy positions with their own eyes, if possible. While that's happening, they're completing the plan. They issue the final order, ideally over a model of the terrain, and then the last step is continuous. Supervise and refine.
So it's a much more compressed, leader-centric version of the big staff process.
It is. It pushes that same logic and discipline all the way down to the lowest levels.
Let's shift to execution itself. The plan is in motion. Now the commander's job becomes managing variance.
Right. Managing the difference between the plan and reality. And they make 2 kinds of decisions.
What are they?
First are execution decisions. These are minor adjustments, usually anticipated. It's when you hit a pre-planned decision point and you execute a branch that you already thought about during wargaming.
And the second type is more serious?
The adjustment decision. This is for when there's a substantial variance. The enemy did something totally unexpected, or a huge opportunity just appeared. This might require you to significantly modify your whole course of action, maybe even go back and reframe the problem because your initial assumptions were proven wrong.
And to help make those decisions in real time, the staff uses tools they built during planning. The decision support template and decision support matrix.
The decision support template is the graphic. It's an overlay for the map that shows where and when the commander expects to make decisions.
And the matrix is the playbook that goes with it.
It is. The decision support matrix is the written version. It lists each decision point, what the decision is, what information is needed to make it, the CCIRs, and what actions to take. It connects the information directly to the action.
So it's a cheat sheet for high-stakes decisions.
A very, very well thought out cheat sheet.
There's one more tool that's fascinating, the one that plans for the commander being out of the picture.
The delegated authorities matrix. This is a really important one. It's a document that explicitly states which subordinate leaders are authorized to make certain time-sensitive decisions if the commander can't be reached.
What kind of decisions are we talking about?
High-level stuff. It could be giving the operations officer authority to shift a major intelligence asset, or allowing the deputy commander to approve a certain type of fire mission that would normally require the commander's personal approval.
So it's about ensuring continuity of command when things go sideways.
It prevents paralysis. It ensures the fight can continue even when communication is lost.
You know, this whole deep dive really shows that this doctrine isn't just a military thing. It's a highly disciplined way for any large organization to tackle a complex problem.
It really is a framework for managing complexity under stress.
So to wrap this up, Our look at Field Manual 5.0 has shown this incredible structure. It goes all the way from the abstract, wicked problem framing of Army design methodology.
All the way down to these super granular tools like the decision support matrix that you're using in the middle of the fight.
And it highlights this constant tension, this balance between the science and the art of it all.
It's always a balance. The science is the formats, the checklist, the 7 steps. That's the easy part to teach. But the art, that's the commander's visualization, their experience, their judgment. That's what makes it work.
And it feels like the entire system is built to embrace the idea that the plan is going to change.
That is the whole point. And that's why the single most important thing in any order is the commander's intent. The procedures and formats are just a structure. The quality of the final order, its real utility, comes down to how clearly it communicates the purpose, the why.
Because that's what gives subordinates the guidance they need to adapt when friction and chance show up.
Exactly. Without a clear intent, a subordinate leader is just following a script. With clear intent, they're a thinking, adapting part of the solution.
That idea of purpose-driven direction where you empower people with the why and give them the freedom to figure out the how is, well, it's a powerful lesson for any kind of leadership in any field.
It is indeed. It's the intellectual core of making decisions when the stakes are high.
This was a fantastic deep dive into the doctrine. Thank you.
My pleasure. It was great.
And thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We'll catch you next time.